Hi, I'm Grant Stephen.
And I'm Chris Bernier.
And we're the two investment guys. This week, Chris and I want to talk a little bit more about the markets and some of the issues that we see on the horizon in the near term anyway. You know, when we look at September, it was a month, I think, Chris, that surprised a few people. We put some data points out a few weeks ago and talked about the incidence of down markets versus up markets, and I think the expectation was for September to be a bit wobbly. It turned out to be a decent month overall. There was some volatility through the month, of course. You know, we've got the Toronto Stock Exchange is up about 3% so far this year, which isn't great really, but when you look at the Dow in the US, it's up about 10%. And the global market leader, at least of the major markets that we follow, is Germany, up 24%. Now the caveat there is they were coming off an awfully low point about a year ago. If you remember, the whole Eurozone thing was starting to unfold.
Yeah.
But we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that we see near term coming down the pipe. Chris, why don't we start with the jobs?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of market moving events, and the employment situation reports that we expect later this week could in fact be a market moving event. We get both Canada and the US numbers. On the US, we get ADP report, which is private sector payrolls and non-farm payrolls Friday, and then employment numbers out of Canada on Friday. And the expectations right now are pretty low. So there is a possibility you could see an upside surprise that could move the market higher.
Right, and you know, Chris, it's interesting with the jobs reports because we get a lot of revisions and with that data, and what I mean is, you know, the economists will look back and say, well, we kind of missed the mark there by 20,000 or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see what the revision numbers are as well as the new numbers. When we turn to the earnings, we're just about to kick off third quarter earnings. And again, we have a situation where expectations are quite low. Now, I'm talking about profitability of companies, and it's been decent overall. There's two sectors that are weak and seem to broad brush the market earnings expectations as a whole, and that's energy and materials. If you can take that away, the profit scene looks relatively healthy. But again, we should say that, you know, market expectations are fairly low, so it wouldn't take too much to surprise on the upside there as well.
Absolutely. Now, there's always been this old adage, sell in May and go away, and typically market participants come back into the fall period around now. But we've seen a slow sort of a melt up in the market since June, particularly in North America. And now what we're seeing is what we would call some sideline anxiety, where people have sold early on, have not participated in the current run-up in the markets that we've experienced through the latter part of the summer and in through September. And so that could be another factor as this money tries to get back invested again that could keep the market sort of, as we would call it, a slow melt up.
Right. So Chris, we wanted to talk a little bit then about you know, how to overcome some of those things, and we talk about this quite regularly, and that is to achieve some balance in your portfolio. And what we mean by balance is having a proper allocation to bonds and GICs and a proper allocation to equity, so that you're not trying to figure out when to get in and when to get out. You know, the patient money is the balanced money, Chris, and those are the investors that really get rewarded long term with that type of a strategy.
That's right. And the other thing with balance in the portfolio, there's times in the market when certain asset classes do better than others, and so it helps reduce the volatility overall in the portfolio over time. We want to thank you again for your questions and comments. Please keep them coming. You can contact Grant and I at twoinvestmentguys.com.
Join us next time. Chris and I will continue talking about some of the dynamics in the market. So until then, I'm Grant.
And I'm Chris.
And we're the two investment guys.